My name is Celestine, though most people call me Celeste. I always thought of myself as steady, the kind of woman who planned, prepared, and never left room for chaos. That was how I survived growing up in a family where birthdays were forgotten and bills were often paid late. I swore my adult life would be different, stable, predictable, safe. When I met Adrian, he seemed to fit that vow like a lock to its key. He was charming but calm, successful without arrogance, affectionate without smothering. He always said I made him feel grounded. I believed him, and I built my life around that belief. Our third wedding anniversary was supposed to be simple. A dinner reservation at the same little Italian place where he had proposed, a bottle of wine we saved for special occasions, and then a weekend away in the cabin by the lake. I had bought a new dress, pale blue, with soft folds that felt like silk running across my skin. I lit candles before he arrived, played the playlist he once made for me, and set the table with care. I wanted him to feel celebrated, because I felt grateful. Only, he never showed up. Adrian had texted that morning, early flight to Denver. Client emergency. Back late. Rain check? He added a heart emoji, as if that tiny symbol could erase the weight of the words. At first, I told myself it was fine. He had an important job. Emergencies happen. But as the hours ticked by and the candles dripped into pools of wax, I sat alone at our table with 2 untouched plates of pasta and a bottle of wine that tasted bitter without him. The silence pressed against me until I could not stand it. I picked up my phone and scrolled back through his message. Denver. Client. Emergency. I tried to imagine him rushing through airports, hunched over his laptop, exhausted but dedicated. Yet a strange chill curled in my stomach, because in 3 years of marriage, Adrian had never once missed an anniversary. Not one. I poured the wine into the sink, watched the red swirl down the drain, and told myself I was being paranoid. Still, when I climbed into bed, the other side of the mattress stayed cold, and that emptiness whispered louder than any words. The next morning, I woke with a headache that felt heavier than the wine I had barely drunk. Adrian had not called. His side of the bed was still untouched. He came home just after sunrise, suit slightly wrinkled, tie loosened, smile rehearsed. Flight delays, he said. I am sorry, Celeste. I hated missing last night. He kissed my forehead as if affection could mask absence. I wanted to believe him. I nodded, made coffee, and pretended his explanation was enough. But a quiet part of me, the part that had learned as a child not to ignore what was missing, filed the moment away. A man who had never missed an anniversary had suddenly found an emergency urgent enough to erase one. I thought that would be the end of it. A small hurt, explained away. But weeks later, while I was sorting through laundry, I found a receipt folded into the pocket of his suit jacket. A hotel in Chicago. Paid in full. Dated the night of our anniversary. My heart stuttered. Chicago, not Denver. A hotel room, not a delayed flight. I sat on the floor with the receipt trembling in my hand, the washing machine humming behind me, and understood that the man I had trusted was keeping a secret. A dangerous, deliberate secret. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was a client dinner that ran late. Maybe he stayed overnight to avoid driving tired. But the receipt said anniversary package. Roses. Chocolate. Champagne. All of it addressed to room 417. My vision blurred as if my own body refused to let me see more. Adrian had not just missed our anniversary. He had spent it celebrating, with someone else. That was the night I decided my marriage was no longer what I thought it was. That was the night suspicion began to harden into certainty. And that was the night I promised myself, if he had built a double life, I would be the one to end it. The receipt haunted me. I tucked it into a drawer that night, but sleep refused to come. I kept seeing the words anniversary package, replaying them like a cruel echo. Roses. Chocolate. Champagne. My hands had set a table with candles while his had signed a bill for another woman. The next morning, I watched Adrian stir sugar into his coffee as if nothing in the world was wrong. He asked about my schedule, smiled when I mentioned the grocery list, kissed me goodbye at the door. He was a husband painted in perfect strokes. But now I knew to look at the brush lines, and the picture began to blur. That week, I tested him. Small, harmless questions. How was Denver? I asked casually, as I chopped onions. His fork hesitated for half a second before he said, busy, long meetings. He glanced at his phone, too quickly, too carefully. Which hotel did you stay at? I pressed, keeping my tone light. The Hyatt, he replied instantly. Too instantly. A rehearsed line, as if he had practiced it on the flight home. I smiled, said nothing, and let the conversation drift to safer waters. But inside me, something hardened. Over the next few days, I began to notice other things I had once ignored. Late-night calls that ended when I entered the room. Receipts crumpled into pockets, none from Denver. A faint scent of perfume on his jacket that was not mine, floral, sharp, the kind that lingers even after washing. Each sign was a tiny thread, and together they wove a pattern I could no longer deny. Adrian was not just busy. He was not just working late. He was living a life that did not include me. Still, I needed more than suspicion. I needed proof. One evening, after he left for what he claimed was a client dinner, I sat on the floor with my laptop open and his tablet charging nearby. Adrian was careless with technology. He used the same password for everything. I hesitated, heart racing, before typing it in. The screen unlocked. At first, there was nothing unusual: emails, presentations, spreadsheets. But then I found the calendar. Not just one, but two. The work calendar I always saw. And another, private, labeled simply personal. I clicked it open, and my throat tightened. On the night of our anniversary, the entry read, Dinner with Clara. Hotel 417. Clara. A name. A woman with a place in his schedule. My vision blurred, but I forced myself to keep scrolling. More entries. Weekends marked Chicago. Messages saved with her initials. A pattern stretching back months, maybe longer. I stared at the screen until the words blurred into black lines. Adrian did not just have an affair. He had another life. Another woman. Another version of himself, carefully hidden from me. When he returned that night, he smiled as if the world had not shifted beneath my feet. He slipped off his shoes, kissed my cheek, asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I said yes. I sat beside him on the couch, my body frozen, while inside me, a storm gathered. Because now I had a name. Now I had a city. Now I had a truth too heavy to ignore. The next weekend, when he claimed he had another conference, I followed him. My hands shook on the steering wheel as I trailed his car out of the city and onto the highway. He drove with confidence, never once glancing back, as if certain I would never question him. Hours later, I watched him pull into a neighborhood of tall trees and brick houses. A woman stood on the porch of one, waiting. She was elegant, with dark hair pulled into a neat knot, wearing a dress that shimmered in the afternoon light. Adrian stepped out of the car, and she smiled as if welcoming her husband home. He kissed her. Not the quick, distracted kiss he gave me in the mornings. A kiss full of ownership, of belonging. My nails dug into the steering wheel. Clara was not just a fling. She was his wife. His other life. And in that moment, sitting in my car on a quiet suburban street, I realized the betrayal was not just about love. It was about everything. My marriage, my home, my identity. He had built a lie so vast it swallowed years of my life whole. I started the engine, drove away before he could notice me, and felt tears sting my eyes. But beneath the tears, another feeling stirred, sharp, steady, alive. I was done being the quiet wife in the shadows. If Adrian thought he could live two lives, I would be the one to end both. Once I knew her name, Clara, I could not unknow it. It sat on my tongue like metal, bitter and heavy. I whispered it into the dark of our bedroom just to hear how it sounded. Clara. The syllables belonged to someone else, yet somehow they had stolen my marriage. But suspicion and a single calendar entry were not enough. If I was going to confront Adrian, no, if I was going to end this on my terms, I needed proof strong enough to burn his excuses to ash. The first step was simple: watch him. Adrian had patterns, and now I studied them the way a detective studies maps. Every Tuesday, he claimed to have late sessions. Every other Friday, business dinners. Some weekends, emergency trips. I marked them all in a notebook with red ink. Soon, I saw the rhythm. The weeks he disappeared from me, he was with her. But I needed more than patterns. I needed evidence. I began with his phone. Adrian was cautious, but not cautious enough. He never saved Clara's name, only her initials, C. At first, it looked like a client. But clients do not send heart emojis at midnight. Clients do not write, "Can't wait to see you, love." I screenshotted every message. I backed them up in a hidden folder. Next, his credit card statements. I waited until he left his wallet on the nightstand, then carefully slipped the card out and photographed the numbers. I created an online login in secret. There it was: hotel charges, restaurants in Clara's city, jewelry shops where he never bought me a single gift. Each charge was a nail in the coffin of our marriage. Then I turned to travel. Adrian always claimed conferences. So I called one of the companies he supposedly met with. "I'm confirming attendance for Adrian Hall," I said politely. Silence. Then, "I'm sorry, we don't have that name on the list." My pulse quickened. He had lied so many times, so smoothly, that even I had believed him. But now the truth was unraveling. I did not stop there. I needed eyes. I remembered the woman across the street, Mrs. Keller, who noticed everything from her porch. One evening, I casually asked, "Have you ever seen Adrian leave when I'm out of town?" She adjusted her glasses and said, "All the time, dear. He packs suitcases like clockwork." Her casual tone stung. To her, it was nothing. To me, it was everything. I thanked her, forced a smile, then went inside before my tears could betray me. That night, I took the boldest step. I drove back to Clara's neighborhood. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, but I parked far enough to stay hidden. I waited. Hours passed. Then his car appeared, pulling into her driveway. He stepped out, carrying groceries in one hand and flowers in the other. Clara met him at the door. They looked like a married couple coming home. I lifted my phone. Click. Click. Photograph after photograph. I did not cry this time. I felt a strange calm, like a surgeon cutting out something rotten. The next day, I called an old friend from college, Renee, now a lawyer. We had not spoken in years, but when she heard my voice, she asked no questions. I explained in vague terms: financial betrayal, hidden life. Her voice was steady. Document everything. Keep a timeline. Do not confront him until you are ready. Lies collapse when truth is patient. I thanked her, closed my eyes, and let her words sink into me. By now, my folder was thick. Screenshots of texts. Credit card charges. Travel records. Photos of him with Clara. Enough to silence his every excuse. But with every new piece of evidence, my anger sharpened. It was no longer just betrayal. It was theft. He had stolen years of my life, stolen the person I believed he was, stolen trust that could never be returned. And when people steal from me, I do not just take back what is mine. I make sure they never take again. One night, as Adrian snored beside me, I whispered into the darkness, "You chose this." I pressed my hand against my notebook, thick with evidence, and knew the next step would not just be gathering proof. It would be turning that proof into a weapon. Because if Adrian wanted to live a double life, I would be the one to end both halves of it, legally, publicly, and in a way he would never forget. With evidence stacked like bricks, I realized proof alone would not deliver justice. Proof was silent until given a voice, and I needed allies who could help me turn whispers into thunder. The first was Renee. My college friend had grown sharper with time. When I laid out the timeline, texts, charges, photographs, her eyes narrowed. "You have enough to end this marriage on your terms," she said. "But if you want to do more than just leave him, you'll need strategy. Quiet, precise, lawful." Her words steadied me. This was not about rage. This was about control. Renee offered more than advice. She introduced me to a private investigator she trusted, Marcus. He specialized in domestic cases, men with business trips that always led elsewhere. When we met at his office, a dim room lined with case files, I slid the folder across the table. He studied the photographs. "Classic double life," he muttered. "They think they're careful, but patterns always give them away." "What I want," I said, "is to end both his lives at once. His lies, his reputation, his games. But legally. I don't want him to walk away playing the victim." Marcus tapped the folder. "Then you let me track him for 2 more weeks. Travel, addresses, witnesses. By the end, you'll have a dossier so solid a judge could frame it." 2 weeks. I could wait. Patience had already been my greatest weapon. The second ally came unexpectedly, my sister, Amelia. We were never especially close, but when I finally broke down and told her everything, she showed up at my door with 2 bottles of wine and a fire in her eyes. "He wasted your love, Elara," she said, gripping my hands. "Don't waste your power. Whatever you need, I'm with you." For the first time I allowed myself to cry, not out of weakness, but because I finally had someone to cry with. Over the following days, I began to weave the setup. Adrian thought I was quiet, compliant, blind. He had no idea I was memorizing every alibi he fed me. No idea I was forwarding copies of his receipts to Renee. No idea Marcus was tailing him from hotel lobbies to Clara's front porch. I began rehearsing in my mind how the reveal would unfold, how each piece of proof would strike him like a bell tolling the end. But I also rehearsed the legal side, asset protection, joint accounts, the house deed. With Renee's guidance, I quietly moved my salary into a separate account under my name only. I changed the beneficiary on my insurance. I checked credit reports to ensure he had not used my identity for loans. Every detail mattered. One night, as Adrian prepared for another conference, I kissed his cheek and whispered, "Safe travels." He smiled, thinking he had fooled me again. Minutes later, Marcus texted, "He's not heading to the airport. He's driving straight to Clara's." It almost made me laugh. How predictable he was, how ordinary his lies seemed now that the mask was slipping. But my setup was not only financial or legal. It was emotional. Adrian had made me feel invisible, erased in favor of another woman. That would be his undoing. Because when I revealed everything, it would not just be to him. It would be to Clara. To our families. To his colleagues. To everyone who had ever seen him as the faithful husband, the charming professional, the man who worked late. By the end, there would be no stage left for him to perform on. 2 weeks passed, and Marcus delivered the dossier. Neatly bound, dates aligned, photographs stamped with times. Adrian at restaurants with Clara. Adrian entering her house with overnight bags. Adrian kissing her on the sidewalk. Adrian lying with every breath he spoke. I flipped through the pages, each one like a nail hammered into the coffin of his double life. My hand shook not from fear, but from anticipation. "This," Marcus said, tapping the cover, "is enough to strip him of everything: divorce settlement, custody arguments, even professional credibility. All clean. All by the book." I closed the folder, exhaled slowly, and looked at Renee and Amelia. "It's time," I said. Renee nodded. "Then let's build your counterplan." The night after Marcus handed me the dossier, I could not sleep. I spread the pages across my dining table like puzzle pieces, every photograph and receipt forming a map of deceit. Adrian's life was a house of cards, and all I had to do was choose when to pull the bottom piece. Renee leaned over my shoulder, glass of wine in hand. "He thinks he's playing chess," she said. "But you're holding the entire board." She was right. For months I had been cornered, treated like a pawn. Now, I was in control of the game. The question was not if I would strike. It was how. I wanted a reveal that could not be twisted, one so undeniable that even Adrian's silver tongue would collapse under its weight. Quiet exposure in court would punish him financially, but it would not pierce his ego. And Adrian lived for ego. He lived to be admired, respected, envied. Taking that from him would cut deeper than any settlement. That is when the idea arrived, sharp and electric. His upcoming anniversary dinner with Clara. Marcus had confirmed it was already booked, a private table at a high-end restaurant in the city, the kind with velvet chairs and chandeliers like frozen rain. Adrian had planned to spend our anniversary celebrating with her. He thought he had hidden the reservation under a false name. Marcus found it anyway. I stared at the printout, my pulse hammering. "This is where it ends," I whispered. Renee raised an eyebrow. "You're not just thinking of confronting him, are you?" "I'm thinking of making the entire night about the truth," I said. The plan unfolded piece by piece. I would arrange for Clara to discover who I was, not through a bitter confrontation, but through undeniable fact. I would arrive at the same restaurant, not as a scorned wife begging for answers, but as a woman who owned the room. Marcus could provide discreet surveillance. Renee would help prepare a public statement. Amelia offered to accompany me, just in case emotions ran high. The more I built the counterplan, the more calm I felt. This was not reckless rage. It was orchestration. First, I secured legal ground. With my lawyer's help, I drafted preliminary divorce papers citing abandonment, financial misconduct, and infidelity. All backed by Marcus's dossier. Everything was clean, airtight, admissible. I placed the documents in a folder and slid it into my purse. Second, I prepared the reveal itself. I booked a table at the same restaurant under my own name, one that would give me a clear view of theirs. I spoke with the maitre d', ensuring discretion but also making it clear that my presence was intentional. A generous tip guaranteed cooperation. Third, I rehearsed my lines. Adrian thrived on chaos. If I showed anger, he would spin it into drama. If I cried, he would cast me as hysterical. So I practiced speaking calmly, directly, with the weight of truth behind each word. No shouting. No insults. Just exposure. The final detail was presentation. I chose a dress Adrian had always said was too bold, deep emerald that lit my skin like fire. I wore it anyway. That night, I would not be small, or quiet, or hidden in his shadow. As the date approached, tension built inside me like a storm waiting to break. Adrian believed he was untouchable, but he had no idea the ground beneath him was already gone. 2 days before the anniversary, Amelia clasped my hands. "Are you sure you're ready?" "I've been ready since the first lie," I said. Now I'm just giving him the stage he built for himself. The night came quickly. I stood before the mirror, fastening the clasp of a necklace that shimmered like steel. In my purse rested the dossier, the divorce papers, and my phone ready to record if necessary. Every piece was in place. Adrian thought it would be a night of romance with his hidden wife. Instead, it would be the night his double life shattered. As I slipped on my heels and opened the door, my heart beat steady. Not frantic. Not afraid. Steady. Because this was no longer his story. It was mine. The city pulsed with weekend energy as I arrived at the restaurant. Golden lights spilled across the cobblestones, and valet attendants moved with rehearsed grace. I stepped out of the car, clutching my purse, every detail rehearsed in my mind. Tonight was supposed to unfold with precision. But the moment I walked through the glass doors, the first crack in my plan appeared. The maitre d', a tall man with polished shoes and sharp eyes, greeted me with a measured smile. "Mrs. Donovan," he said, recognizing the name on my reservation. He leaned in discreetly. "Your husband is already here. But there's a complication." My pulse quickened. "What kind of complication?" He lowered his voice. "They didn't book a table for two. It's a table for four. He's hosting not only his companion but her parents." Her parents. My mind raced. I had prepared for Clara, maybe for Adrian's lies unraveling in front of her. But her parents? That turned the evening into something much larger. This was not just a romantic anniversary dinner, it was an introduction, a merging of lives, a performance meant to impress. For one dizzying second, doubt clawed at me. If I revealed myself now, would it look like a spectacle? Would Clara dismiss me as a jealous intruder, manipulated by Adrian's story? I took a slow breath. No. This was not a setback. It was an opportunity. With her parents present, the truth would strike harder, cutting through every polished word Adrian might attempt. Still, it meant my timing had to be perfect. One wrong move, and he would twist it. I followed the maitre d' through the dining room, my emerald dress catching the glow of chandeliers. I caught sight of them before they saw me. Adrian, in his tailored navy suit, sat straight-backed, pouring wine with the smile I once thought was mine alone. Beside him, Clara, radiant in silk, her hand resting on his arm. Across the table, her parents leaned in, hanging on his every word. I slipped into my reserved seat nearby, perfectly angled toward them. From here, I could see everything, the way Adrian laughed too loudly, the way Clara's parents nodded in approval, the way he looked like a man rehearsing for a life that was never his to claim. My phone buzzed gently in my purse. A message from Marcus, all cameras set. "Ready when you are." Good. The dossier was not just on paper anymore, it was recorded, digitized, waiting for release if needed. I sipped water, steadying my breath, rehearsing my calm. Timing was everything. And then, another twist. The waiter approached me, confusion flickering in his eyes. "Excuse me, ma'am," he whispered. "Mr. Donovan asked that no additional guests be seated near his party tonight. Would you like me to move you?" He had anticipated shadows. He had tried to control the room. I smiled, keeping my voice soft. "No. I'll stay right here." The waiter hesitated, then nodded. "Very well." Across the room, Adrian caught sight of me. For the briefest second, his confident expression faltered. His hand froze around the stem of his glass. Then, like a seasoned actor, he recovered, leaning in closer to Clara, pressing a kiss to her temple as though to say, "You cannot touch me here." But I had already touched him. Just by being present, I had cracked his mask. I folded the napkin across my lap and waited. Because the night was no longer about his control. It was about the moment he realized it was gone. The clink of silverware echoed like a countdown as I waited. Adrian leaned forward, charming Clara's parents with stories I knew by heart. He told them about late nights building strategies, about trips to secure contracts, about sacrifices for the future. Every sentence was a theft, each word stolen from the life I had carried beside him. My hands rested on my lap, calm and deliberate. Tonight was not about rage. It was about precision. The waiter returned with a tray of champagne flutes, moving gracefully between tables. He paused at mine, placing one in front of me with a knowing glance. My signal. The documents were ready. The truth was no longer just mine to hold. I rose slowly, glass in hand, my emerald dress catching every eye as I stepped toward their table. Clara turned first, confusion spreading across her delicate smile. Adrian's parents, no, Clara's parents, watched with polite curiosity. And Adrian? Adrian's face drained of color, his jaw tightening as though bracing for impact. Adrian, I said softly, my voice carrying just enough for the nearby tables to hear. You look surprised. Did you really think I wouldn't come? Clara blinked. I'm sorry, who? I'm his wife. The words landed like stone. The air stilled. The restaurant, a moment earlier alive with laughter and music, seemed to hush itself into silence. Clara's mother's eyes widened. Her father shifted uncomfortably, as though searching for escape. Clara turned to Adrian, disbelief trembling in her voice. Tell me she's lying. Adrian laughed, forced, brittle, desperate. This is some kind of misunderstanding. She's unstable. I can explain. I cut him off, placing the manila envelope on the table. No need. The explanation is all here. Marriage certificate. Bank statements. Travel receipts. Photos. Dates that overlap with the anniversaries you celebrated with her. Clara's hand shook as she reached for the envelope. Adrian tried to grab it first, but I was faster, sliding it directly to her. Go ahead. Open it. See exactly where he was when he claimed to be with you. Clara tore the flap, eyes scanning the papers, her face crumbling with every page. Her mother leaned in, reading silently, then recoiled as though burned. Adrian, Clara whispered. You promised me you were divorced. That she was irrelevant. He reached for her hand, but she pulled back as if his touch carried fire. Clara, listen. She's exaggerating. You know how manipulative. I stepped closer, holding up my phone. Do you mean manipulative like this? With one tap, the recording played. His voice, clear, undeniable, as long as Clara doesn't find out about my wife, everything's fine. I'll keep them both happy until I decide. Gasps rippled through the room. Clara's father slammed a hand against the table, rattling the silverware. You humiliated my daughter. Adrian's mask cracked. His polished calm collapsed, desperation bleeding into every frantic word. Clara, please, none of this matters. We're building a future. She's just bitter. But Clara was no longer listening. Her hand shook as she pushed the envelope back toward him. Our future was a lie. I set my glass down gently, the crystal ringing like a bell. No, Clara. His entire life is a lie. The waiter, right on cue, dimmed the lights and projected the dossier onto the private dining wall. Emails, receipts, photos, it was all there. Inescapable. The room erupted. Guests murmured, some gasped outright. Clara's mother covered her mouth, Clara's father cursed under his breath, and Clara, poor Clara, just stared at him, tears streaking her cheeks but resolve hardening in her eyes. Adrian stood, knocking over his chair, his voice a roar edged with panic. Turn it off. You don't know what you're doing. I met his eyes, steady and cold. On the contrary. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm ending your double life. The screen flickered with the final image, our wedding photo, side by side with Clara's anniversary post, both dated the same week. The proof was undeniable. And in that moment, Adrian realized it was over. Not just with me. Not just with Clara. With everyone. The restaurant was no longer a place for celebration. It had transformed into a stage of reckoning. Conversation stopped, forks froze midair, and every eye was fixed on us. The spotlight Adrian had craved his entire life now burned too brightly, and it was no longer flattering. It was searing. Clara's father was the first to speak. His voice thundered across the table. You used my daughter as a prop. You lied to her, to us, to everyone here. Do you understand what you've done? Adrian's hands trembled as he tried to straighten his tie, his charm unraveling thread by thread. I never meant to hurt anyone. Clara, you know me. You know my heart. He jabbed a finger at me. She's twisting everything. But Clara's eyes no longer softened for him. She pushed her chair back, standing tall despite her shaking. Don't you dare blame her. You looked me in the eye and told me she didn't exist. You kissed me goodnight while your wife sat at home waiting. Her voice broke, but her spine held. You made me your accomplice. Gasps echoed. A guest whispered too loudly, he had 2 wives? Another muttered, what kind of man does that? The crowd wasn't on his side anymore. They were the jury, and their verdict was clear. Adrian's composure snapped. His voice rose, desperate. Clara, listen, our love is real. She's bitter, she's jealous, I cut him off. Do not use me as your shield, Adrian. This isn't jealousy. This is truth. I gestured toward the wall where the evidence still glowed, undeniable. You built your empire on lies, and tonight it collapses. Clara's mother leaned toward her daughter, whispering fiercely, we're leaving. Now. But Clara shook her head, eyes locked on Adrian. No, I'm not leaving until everyone sees him for who he is. The waiter, ever professional, stood silently at the edge of the room, but even he looked disgusted. He glanced at me for direction. I gave a small nod. He dimmed the lights further, leaving Adrian in a harsh spotlight. No escape. Adrian's jaw clenched. This is character assassination. Character assassination? Clara's father's voice was sharp as a blade. No, son. This is the truth catching up to you. The whispers grew louder, spreading through the guests like wildfire. Words like shame, fraud, and disgusting filled the air. Adrian's face reddened as he realized his carefully crafted image was crumbling in real time. Clara lifted the final photo from the envelope and held it high. Our wedding picture. Her lips trembled, but her voice was steady. This is the man who asked me to build a life with him. Well, he already had one. She looked around the room, her voice carrying. Let everyone here remember this moment. Remember what deception looks like. The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Adrian tried one last time, stepping toward her, his hand outstretched. Clara, please. Don't do this. Don't let her win. She recoiled. This isn't about winning. This is about me walking away with dignity. Something you'll never understand. The room erupted in applause, not for me, not for Clara's pain, but for her strength. Guests stood, clapping, their faces grim but resolute. Adrian staggered back as though the sound itself struck him. He looked at me, fury and defeat tangled in his eyes. You'll regret this, he hissed. I met his gaze, my voice calm, final. No, Adrian. The only thing I regret is ever believing you deserved me. The applause grew louder, drowning his protests, forcing him into silence. His double life had ended, not with whispers in the dark, but with the sharp clarity of truth laid bare under the lights. I woke before dawn. No alarm. No dreams. Just a sudden rise to the surface, like a swimmer breaking through cold water. The apartment was silent except for the refrigerator hum. The bouquet from our anniversary sat on the counter, pale lilies opening as if nothing had happened. I took the vase to the sink and tipped it over. Petals slid down the drain. I did not cry. I had cried out my last good tear the night before. I made a list. I did not trust memory. I trusted paper. First item. Bank. Second item. Phone accounts. Third item. Locks. Fourth item. Lawyer. At 8, I was at the branch with my driver's license and a folder of statements. Remove his access, I said. The manager skimmed the marriage certificate, then the separation draft my attorney had emailed at dawn. She nodded. Effective now. She slid a form across the desk. I signed. A small line. A large door closing. Next, the credit card company. I asked them to freeze the joint card, to flag any charges at hotels, jewelers, and gift services. The agent read back my list and said, consider a credit freeze at each bureau. I did it on my phone in the parking lot. 3 freezes. 3 confirmations. My hands were steady. At 10, the locksmith arrived. He moved quickly, quiet and sure, the way people move when they are invited into other people's trouble for a living. New deadbolt. New keypad. New code that only I knew. When he left, the door clicked shut with a clean sound that felt like a sentence. By noon, I was in my attorney's office. Her name was Ruth. Her voice could sound a table and not leave a scratch. We reviewed the folder I had built over weeks. Screenshots. Receipts. Photos. The restaurant video, saved from a guest who had offered it to me without asking for anything back. No-fault divorce, she said. But the pattern matters for support and for a fair split. We file today. She pushed a draft across the desk. We also request exclusive use of the apartment. And a temporary restraining order if he tries to enter. I nodded. Do it. She did. As I stood to leave, her tone softened. You handled last night with precision. That matters in court. Precision. Not rage. Not drama. Precision. At 1, my phone lit up with messages. Some were soft and kind. I am here. Some were sharp. Why did you humiliate him? I answered none of the sharp ones. I sent 3 words to the soft ones. Thank you, truly. At 2, an email arrived from Adrian's employer. Your name appears on our health plan. Please confirm status. I forwarded it to Ruth. She replied within minutes. We will notify them of the separation and ensure continued coverage during proceedings. Also, send me a copy of the plan's beneficiary forms. I did. Adrian had listed me as primary, then added a note in tiny script, to review. He had written that note in spring. He had never reviewed anything. He simply moved forward, certain the floor would hold. At 3, Clara called. Her voice was hoarse but clear. I talked to my parents, she said. They canceled the engagement party. They asked the restaurant for the deposit back. They told our extended family the truth. She paused. I posted a statement. Not your name. Not the video. Just the truth I own. People are angry. People are kind. Some are both. Do you regret last night? I asked. No, she said. I regret not asking questions sooner. She told me she had gone to Adrian's condo that morning to gather her things. He had not been there. The door was ajar. Inside, the place looked staged for an open house. No clothes on the chairs. No toothbrush in the bathroom. In the top drawer of the nightstand she found a second phone. She brought it to the carrier. The employee scrolled and frowned. Multiple lines, all in his name, he said. Different cities. He could not legally share much, but the summary was enough. Adrian had not built a lie. He had built a network. Clara asked me to meet her at a small coffee shop near the river. We sat by the window with 2 untouched cups growing cold between us. She laid the second phone on the table. I do not want this, she said. I do not want a single string that ties me to him. But I think it belongs in your file. I placed it in a clear bag. Ruth would handle it through proper channels. I am sorry, Clara said. She held my gaze. She did not look away from the ruin. I was not your enemy. I did not know. The words cost her something. I respected the price. You were not my enemy, I said. He counted on us fighting each other. We will not give him that victory. We sat in silence for a long moment. The river moved. People walked their dogs. A child pressed her face to the glass to see the cakes. Life kept going, the way it does, even when yours is sorting itself into before and after. At 4, Ruth called again. We served him, she said. He accepted. His attorney called me within minutes and tried to bargain. I told him the terms are simple. Truth. Full disclosure. No games. She paused. He asked whether you would consider a private settlement. What did you say? I asked. I said your answer is public accountability. He hung up. At 5, my doorbell rang. I checked the peephole. No one. Just a delivery envelope on the mat. No return address. Inside was a small velvet box. Not the one from our wedding. A different one. I opened it. A thin gold chain. On it, a key. Not to my apartment. The tag read a storage unit address in another neighborhood. The handwriting was familiar. Neat. Certain. Adrian's. There was a note. 3 words. Take what's yours. I called Ruth. She advised caution. Do not go alone, she said. Do not go at night. And do not touch anything until we record it. She paused. But we should see what is there. I texted Clara. Did he ever mention a unit? She replied at once. No. But I will come. At 6, I shut off the lights and sat on the floor by the window with my back against the wall. The city glowed. My phone buzzed again. A new message. No name. Just a number. You wanted truth, it read. Open the unit before he does. I stared at the screen. The message felt like a match held over dry paper. I looked at the key in my palm. It was light. It was heavy. It was both. We would go in the morning. With Ruth. With a camera. With a list. With calm. But that night, as the room settled and the refrigerator hummed and the city sighed, I let myself imagine what could be stacked behind a metal door. Photos. Receipts. Letters. Gifts. A record of every story he told, boxed and labeled in his careful hand. The kind of archive that ends a double life for good. The kind of archive that could still hurt, if I was not ready. I placed the key on the table and turned off my phone. The apartment went quiet. I closed my eyes. I did not dream. At sunrise, we would turn that key. When I woke up the morning after it all came crashing down, the world felt eerily quiet. No buzzing phone with his excuses. No flowers left at the door with meaningless apologies. Just the silence of a life I finally owned again. I stretched in my bed and realized something so simple, so profound, I had not woken up afraid. For months, maybe years, fear had been stitched into my mornings like a second skin. That day, it was gone. The news about what happened spread quickly, of course. It always does when a man builds his life on lies and then watches them unravel in the most public way. At first, I dreaded the whispers. Would people judge me? Would they think I was cruel? But something unexpected happened. The whispers turned into messages. Women I had barely spoken to reached out, telling me about their own betrayals, their own suspicions, their own nights of wondering if they were crazy. They told me I was brave. That my story gave them courage to finally confront their own truths. And in their words, I felt less alone. As for him, well, his double life ended the moment I exposed it. The woman he had paraded as his wife in that other city blocked him. His reputation at work shattered overnight. He sent emails, tried to twist the story, but nobody believed him anymore. The proof was too strong. His lies too tangled. And me? I did not even have to raise my voice. I let the truth do all the shouting. But the real transformation was not about him at all. It was about me. I had been living small for so long, shrinking myself to fit inside a picture he had painted. Every time he mocked my questions, every time he brushed off my suspicions, every time he told me I was imagining things, I chipped away at my own voice. Until I realized that silence only protects the liar, never the one who has been betrayed. Breaking that silence was the loudest, most liberating thing I have ever done. The following weeks were not easy. Healing never is. There were days when I cried, not because I missed him, but because I was furious at myself for wasting so much love on someone who had built a castle out of sand. But then I would look in the mirror and remind myself, I did not stay buried. I fought my way back to the surface. I chose me. And that is what I want to leave with you. If you are listening right now and you feel the sting of betrayal, if you have ever doubted your worth because someone you trusted made you question it, hear me clearly, you are not weak for loving. You are not foolish for hoping. And you are not broken for finally saying enough. You are human. And you deserve the kind of love that does not require you to erase yourself. I once thought revenge meant destruction. But now I know the sweetest revenge is truth. Truth and the quiet dignity of walking away with your head high while the liar drowns in their own stories. So yes, he spent our anniversary with her. But I ended his double life, with proof, with courage, and with my own voice. And when I look back, I do not see a broken woman. I see a survivor who decided that no man gets to write her story for her. And now, I turn to you. Have you ever had to reclaim your power after someone tried to take it from you? Have you ever had to remind yourself that you are enough, even when someone else made you feel small? Share it with me. Drop a 1 in the comments if this story resonated with you, or tell me where you are listening from. I read every single one, because your stories matter too. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. Remember, choosing yourself is never selfish. It is survival. And it is the first step toward the kind of future you deserve. This was my story. Now go write yours, on your own terms.